Developing colour palettes. Defining and developing colour palettes for each of your trend stories. So why do we need colour forecasting? Colour is a powerful selling tool that can affect our purchasing decisions. Just imagine a world that's fully monochromatic or black and white. Without the emotional appeal of colour, products would be purchased primarily for utilitarian purposes. What would happen if colour offered by retailers were the same each year, season after season? Things would be pretty boring. You probably wouldn't go back to buy more until you actually needed more. Even when a palette has been developed carefully and is on trend, it may still fail to resonate with what wants and needs of a consumer. For example, each brand and retailer will need to adapt a colour forecast specific to their consumer profile's needs. Through colour-correct forecasting, brands and retailers consistently utilise colour to speak to their consumers and ultimately drive sales. Ever since the Industrial Revolution began bringing consumers an expanding array of goods and products to choose from, colour has become increasingly important in the development, marketing and sales of those goods. This is especially true for the fashion businesses. Thanks to today, highly sophisticated, mass-produced and multinational industry, the consumer has become accustomed to a wide range of inspirational colour choices in apparel. According to the International Colour Authority, colour comes before style and price and is the first factor to which the consumer responds. The colour forecaster. Colour forecasting is created by skillful and experienced individuals doing a similar kind of role to trend forecasters, but specifically for colour. They'll often work for companies also such as WGSN, Trend Bureau and Pantone, for example. Colour forecasters develop their palette with two types of customer in mind. Firstly, the designer, product developer or a brand and retailer. These are the business or the person who is paying for the forecast, which they will then adapt to their specific brand and consumer profile's needs. And then also to the actual customer. The person whose buying decisions will actually confirm the colour forecaster's forecast. Colour forecasting works in parallel with trend forecasting. It also takes inspiration from pastel influences, so the colour forecaster will be researching into the same kind of things that a trend forecaster will, but again, they'll be looking for things that are specifically going to influence colour. They take into account also the changing and emerging consumer needs. The trend forecaster and colour forecaster will work together to make sure trends and palettes sync. So quite often they'll start off with the same influences, go off and create their own forecasts, but ultimately come back together to make sure each one complements and works alongside each other, ultimately making sure that collections will actually sell to consumers. So why is colour forecasting so important, and why can't this just be done by trend forecasters? Fabric is the single greatest cost in apparel production, up to 60% of the garment's FOB price. Brands and retailers spend thousands and thousands of pounds developing and experimenting with lab dips to ensure they have the correct colours for each season. This means that they really do need specific colour forecasts that will then complement their trends and work alongside their trends. Let's look at the colour forecasting timeline. This line represents the weeks before the selling season actually starts. So 12 to 18 months in advance, the colour forecasting organisations such as Intercolour, WGSN and so on begin the process of developing seasonal palettes. Trend forecasters begin consulting with spinners, mills and brands before the season. Spinners start developing yarns and brands begin their trend concept development along this time as well. 15 months in advance, colour forecasters may contribute to trend consultations and committees at textile shows such as Textile View, Premier Vision and so on. Mills develop fabrics and may dye sample colours, and brands begin fabric research, and retailers continue to develop their own concept development. 12 months in advance, yarn spillers, mills and dye and chemical companies must have correct colour materials in place for textile shows and sample orders. Brands and retailers at this stage also visit all the trade fairs. 10 months in advance, colour forecasters continue to monitor designer, retail, consumer and street trends to alert clients of new developments within the colour industry. Retailers send tech packs to factories, develop lab dips and produce product for approval. 8 months in advance, brand prototypes are approved and garment samples are made up in full colour. 6 months in advance, designer collections may influence colour assortment at this stage as well. Colour forecasters may meet with brands and retailers to confirm colour pre-production. Brands and retailers and manufacturers order production fabrics and trims. Colour matching lab dips are confirmed with manufacturers ready for manufacturing of all the collections. Fast fashion retailers collection works locally to develop colour and fabrics and prototypes based on designer collections. So this is very much about fast fashion. So lots of retailers will work to drop collections in very, very quickly, hence the reason they have to get them produced locally to make sure that there's a small lead time. And this means that they can do really, really fast fashion collections influenced by the catwalks very, very quickly. 3 months. Garments are inspected, packed, shipped and delivered to brands' retailers' warehouse ready for distribution into stores. 4 to 5 weeks in advance, fast fashion brands' productions are shipped, ready to be in store. So what does a colour forecast look like, and how do trend forecasters use it? At a first glance, visually they can look very similar to trend stories. They're quite often a lot more busy though. And of course, they're very colour specific. They're not giving you contextual information or information to help you with design development. They can have a much broader colour palette than a trend board, and quite often there's a lot less synergy between the images than on a trend board. Let's take a look at a video by Pantone where they explain the colour forecasting for their season and the process behind it.
Design and color trends are not conjured up in a crystal ball. They are the result of much observation of the surrounding natural world, as well as the influences that will impact the world of the future. They include social issues, the economy, technology, lifestyles and play styles, diversions, entertainments, and most importantly, the needs, moods, fantasies, and aspirations of consumers that are then translated into appropriate styling, colors, and combinations. The following 8 palettes best express the gamut of directional themes. The need for healthier and/or more artisanal foods has grown from traditional farmers' markets to green markets. Found on country roads or urban lots, these visually appealing and taste-tempting sites invite us to stop and sample a broader and more diverse selection of goods and goodies. From tomato puree to Beaujolais and the tang of super lemon or the bite of apple green, to the more exotic flavors of Dijon, paprika, or chutney, these are representational hues that both entice and appeal to the eyes and the taste buds. Think of edible design, taking a more hands-on approach, artisanal elements, casual cuisine, plentiful and playful, healthy habitats, urban harvests, rural flavors, distillations, bountiful berries, and authentic taste. The current and continuing concern for the management of natural resources, the need to preserve and reserve, remains uppermost in the minds of many. Resourcefulness calls not only for the thoughtful use of materials, but the need for originality in reconstructing and redefining products or home furnishing so that they are both stylish and sustainable. The colors in this palette, such as sequoia, golden ochre, and aqua sky, speak of earth and sky, but vibrant tiger lily and mauve orchid add a unique and distinctive presence to the mix. This resourceful palette speaks to inventive integrity, products that are cleverly composed, real value, preservation, soul-searching, sustainability, conservation, regeneration, eco-sensitivity, being responsible. In this nostalgic and idyllic palette, a traditional look is transformed into something that speaks of a more modern attitude. History is honored and updated, while reproductions artfully represent styles of the past without repeating them line for line. It is romantic in both style and mood, offering the promise of a quiet respite. Shapes are graceful, surfaces and colors are engaging and unobtrusive in soothing stratosphere blue, creme de menthe, lavender gray, Deauville mauve, counterbalanced by the welcoming warmth of cameo pink and amber light, and finished with a hint of pale gold. Colors in this palette are time-honored, archival, subtly sumptuous, distinctive, contemporized antique, displaying new traditions, grand gestures, halcyon days, restoration, past references, tapestries of experience, and sense of time. Skillfully used, colors really define the character and atmosphere of a space. Understated and sophisticated with attention to detail, this grouping, called ambiance, adds a thoughtful aesthetic that can be adapted seamlessly and successfully into many motifs. Rich coffee bean and cognac are central to the color theme, while the subtle shades of stonewash blue, stucco, desert sage, silver pink, a taupe cast brindle, and 2 shades of gray add an interesting intensity and synergistic effect to the palette. The Ambiance palette unveils an adaptive attitude, layered elements, self-expression, visual impact, retro glam, veiled effects, a feeling of quiet sensuousness, symbiosis of hues, and a melding of moods. Inspired primarily by the continent of Africa with its vastness and complexities, Gatherings brings together a compilation of colors that demonstrate the uniqueness of the region. Artifacts and handicrafts reflect a creative boldness that are expressed in a panoply of appropriately named colors: cypress green, smoke blue, sand and oasis, mixed with the magic of twilight mauve, the piquancy of lemon curry, and the heated glimmer of copper coin. The colors in Gatherings reflect connections, ancestral roots, creative thrift, cultural references, exploration, global environments, productive energies, a need to succeed, and a meeting of the minds. The purveyor and source of light, the mysterious galaxy, is well reflected in a palette that truly illustrates the harmony of hues that is found in the nocturnal sky. Mirroring the colors of the earth, the greens are called greener pastures and peridot, powerfully contrasted against deepest extraterrestrial blues, silvers, and stormy violets. Brilliant sprays of turquoise and a radiating orchid tone enhance the atmosphere, while rich gold embodies the energy and splendor of the epicenter of it all, the sun. Galaxy reminds us of liquid gold, a metaphysical presence, illusions, mesmerizing visions, ephemeral images, enhanced technology, cosmic relevance, a sense of space, and a passage of light. High definition offers clarity, classicism, and modernism that is accentuated by elegant contrasts. The refined silhouettes are deceptively simple, yet glamorous. Black, white, and gray are the timeless centerpieces, thoroughly enriched and defined by the dramatic infusion of both amaranth and paisley purple, Malaga wine, and the flowering fuchsia shade of ibis rose, all deftly embellished by old gold and shining silver. High definition embodies a feeling of engineered structures, graphic embellishments, contemporary classics, surface treatments, theatrical touches, modern art, and sleek sophistication. A pastiche can be described as an incongruous combination of materials. This palette illustrates not only a collection of unexpected styles, but colors as well. It is the continuation of the irreverent direction that has been and continues to be influenced by Japanese anime that has made major inroads into the world of design and color. Combinations such as lavandula and absinthe green might be combined with chipmunk, while that same shade of brown might be surrounded by mimosa yellow, a brightened strawberry ice, and more docile little boy blue, while bright cobalt, tangerine, and duffel bag gray offer another idiosyncratic option. The fun-loving pastiche palette represents blends and mixtures, potpourri, conglomerations, a feeling of being tongue-in-cheek, frivolities, rebellious mixes, bold emphasis, revved up, vibrant, and upbeat.
So hopefully from that video you can get an understanding of how complex colour forecasting is and the process surrounding it. So how do you develop colour palettes for your own trends? Well, firstly, you now have a huge amount of information and hopefully have your trend stories also confirmed. And you'll be developing your colour palettes to match your trends, the images within your trends, which have also come from the same platforms that that colour forecasting come from fashion scans, going to trade fairs, doing your consumer scans, looking again at the same cultural indicators from your own pastel analysis, and then as well as taking on information from competitors and partners and making sure you're offering a difference from the previous season, as well as keeping up with your competitors and looking one step ahead. So building your colour palette. Once you've completed your trends, you'll want to start building a colour palette for each of them. Be specific. Don't make your colour palette too broad or too narrow. Bear in mind, a small collection needs to be created from this. If it's too broad, you'll just have a mixture of colours that will just look awful within store. Keeping it more narrow will make sure that the capsule collection is consistent and works well as a collection within a store visually. Split your colour palettes into core and highlight colours, especially when you have got quite a few colours. Make the ones that are the core colours larger and highlight colours that maybe just appear in prints or small details, smaller colour palettes. You'll see this within some of the colour palette examples that I show you later on. Use Pantone references where applicable, but if you don't have access to Pantones, then make sure you give each one of your trend colours a name as well. This can relate to the trend story name as well. Think about when your trend is due to drop in store. If it's due to drop in midsummer, make sure the colours are relevant for midsummer. Think about the fashion seasons. They're also quite complex. For example, spring and summer are mixed up into about 6 different drops, as are autumn and winter. But quite often these can be transitional trends and they can overlap. For example, look at the first spring transitional trend. This is actually launched in stores in the UK in mid-December to early January, what we'd call the heart of winter. And the first spring seasons come in February and March, often our coldest months. This is all due to mainly there's been a competition to be the first one to get your spring-summer collections in store. However, although these are named spring transitional or spring trends, they're quite often still very wintry, seeing a lot of knitwear and light sort of summer colours. It isn't until you start to get to high summer and summer transitional that you start to get the main summer collections in. And this is a reflection within autumn winter too. Again, autumn transitional is dropped in mid-June, often again within the UK, for example, our warmest time of year. And then autumn winter generally kind of comes in for the next couple of months, what is again our summer, before the main winter collections drop around October and November, more of our winter time when people start purchasing more kind of winter style collections. And then of course within the UK we have our holiday and party wear seasons and then the winter transitional. So again, make sure the trends that you're creating specific for each season, the colour palettes are actually relevant for the time of year. This can be quite complex to understand. I always like to, at the beginning of each one of my trend packs, to include a colour matrix at the beginning. This sort of shows the move on for each of the colour palettes, showing the differentiation and the similarities as time goes by. You can see, although there's sort of colour repetitions, they're different shades and hues, and generally as the seasons move on, there'll be fresh colour palettes reflecting that within stores. So taking 3 of the trends from my autumn winter trend publication, you can see they're each very different trends with very different kind of colour palettes at the same time. You can see as we sort of split them up and put them side by side, the corresponding colour palettes, you can see a definite move on. And again, when we go back to highlight colours, the core colours I've put, the main colours for the collection, are all larger squares on here, whereas the highlight colours that are just supposed to play like a small influence, whether it be in a print or a small detail, I've put as smaller rectangles on the colour palettes as well. You can see it here in more detail. Look at your free trend stories and do the following. Develop colour palettes for each of your trends. Add names or even Pantone references if applicable and you have access to them. Ask yourself, is there enough differentiation and development from one of your trends to the other? Ask yourself, does your colour palette suit the time of the season it's due to drop in store? If the answer to B is no, you may need to reshuffle some of your trends, which is absolutely fine, changing the order to suit the time of the season. Good luck. Here are some really interesting further reading and videos on the topic as well to watch in your own time. This also, I think, is a really essential book to read on colour forecasting if you want to read on it further.